Hello guys, it's me MP back with another MonsterVerse video. This time it's an analysis on my favorite MonsterVerse movie, which would be Kong Skull Island. The main thing I will be analyzing will be King Kong vs. Ramarak. For the past 8 years, this has been a debate for quite a long time, and I used to argue about it a lot back in 2017 with some friends of mine. Many tried arguing Kong would have lost if it weren't for human help, but I myself tried telling people that Ramarak had help too. I would also like to shout out Devin Louis, because this video was heavily inspired by his own. We unironically have similar opinions on the topic, which is crazy to think about it. He didn't like me at first, but he did forgive me eventually. Speaking of which, you can check out his channel, because he posts some amazing content. However, today is not that day, because I will instead get right into the analysis. So with all of that said, let's get right into the video. So, we will be starting off with the most important thing, which would be the context. The context is that Kong was weakened before the final fight with Ramarak even started. He was getting lit on fire, which led to him losing oxygen. Ramarak comes to the surface and she completely no-diffs Kong before he could fight back. Kong lost oxygen, so this was the terrible timing for him. Now we know Kong did recover, but it's safe to say it wasn't fully recover. He should still be weakened by just a tiny bit, so by the time he recovers, he should be about 80 to 90% full power. But anyways, Kong should be about 80 to 90% by the time he fights Ramarak. Then again, it's hard to definitively quantify. It's also worth noting both opponents had help. Even if you want to say Ramarak would have won, that's fair, because we can also say Kong would have won if Ramarak didn't throw him into the ship that chained him. Well, now that we went over the context, it's time to analyze what happened on screen. The fight starts with King Kong throwing a boulder at Ramarak. Ramarak then bites onto King Kong's arm, which leaves some blood marks on it. Ramarak then uses her jaw, and she tries biting King Kong's neck, but Kong is tanking it just fine. Kong grabs hold of Ramarak's jaw, trying to break it. However, it doesn't work, and Ramarak appears perfectly fine. Kong tries slamming her onto a mountain, but she tanks it just fine. They seem pretty relative so far. She gets hold of Kong's arm again, making him roar in pain. She even topples him over. Kong gets back up and tries redirecting her bite, but he gets overwhelmed the moment Ramarak breaks free. She tries biting Kong again, but he pushes her away from him so her mouth doesn't reach his head. They're still demonstrated as being relative. Kong punches Ramarak again, and she falls back onto the ground. King Kong grabs a tree and slams it onto Ramarak as she tries charging towards King Kong. Ramarak tries jumping on Kong again, but Kong grabs her just in time. She tries biting Kong, but his grip is too strong. However, she does end up breaking free and yeets him to an abandoned ship with chains. He ends up getting chained. They were very much 50-50, but Ramarak threw him to a ship where he struggled breaking free, which put Ramarak at an advantage. She was about to eat his face. They were relative before that. However, the humans distract Ramarak long enough for Kong to eventually break free. King Kong breaks free and he roars at Ramarak. Before you say Kong had human help, Ramarak needed a ship to chain him to begin with, but otherwise they were 50-50 prior to that. Kong grabs the ship's propeller, which cuts through Ramarak, and he pulls her with it. He uses the chains to strangle her and yeet her far away. Ramarak breaches out of the water, but this time she struggles trying to land a bite. It's like Kong adapted to her skills, which he did. He also proceeds to punch Ramarak and grabs the propeller. Ramarak tries striking Kong, and this time he uses the propeller to leave a huge cut on Ramarak's neck, and she collapses afterward. Kong then saves Mason Weaver, but out of nowhere Ramarak ambushes King Kong, and she bites his arm, which already had blood marks during that fight. They roll on each other and then both break free. Ramarak tries leaping and biting Kong again, trying to eat one of his arms, and he tries pulling it off. Now, I've been very fair so far, but King Kong at this point has adapted to Ramarak's skills, and he then rips her tongue off. Ramarak is officially dead. Kong had won that fight. So my summary is that this fight was a 50-50, but Kong's tendency of adapting to his opponent's skills ultimately gave him the edge. So we know an 80 to 90% Kong Extreme diffed Ramarak in their first encounter, but how would a rematch go? We will be going over both a rematch and first meeting match where Kong isn't weakened. A rematch, well, Kong will now be at full power, meaning he will only be slightly stronger than before, but will honestly struggle less. Why? Because he has now adapted to her skills. This is not to say it's an absolute wash for Kong, but at this point, a rematch would be a mid to high diff in Kong's favor instead of a high to extreme diff because, again, even if he would be only slightly stronger than before, he would be more skilled against Ramarak at this point. He knows her skills by now. So if they rematch, King Kong would win with around mid to high difficulty since he would know how to play his cards right and will take the win. Ramarak's skills started working a lot less when Kong started adapting to it. An alternate first meeting encounter. Now, how would an alternate first meeting encounter go assuming Kong was never weakened and assuming neither had any help? Well, it would be very similar to what happened on screen, but this time the strength gap will be slightly bigger. However, Ramarak will still put up a good fight. This time Kong won't be chained though, meaning he can back up in no time at all. He will 100% adapt to Ramarak's skills, and if she tries to eat his arm, he will pull her tongue out and rip it off, which would kill her just like what happened on screen. So even if we assume neither had any help, Kong would still win this, but it would be very close. So in an alternate version where Kong was never weakened and where neither had any help, he should win with around high to extreme difficulty. So, even being fair, Kong would still beat Ramarak regardless of whether or not it's a rematch or alternate outcome, where neither gets help or are weakened. If it's a full-on rematch, then King Kong wins with mid to high difficulty, but if it's a first meeting match where Kong ain't weakened, then King Kong wins high to extreme difficulty. If you believe Kong was even more weakened during that fight, then Kong would win with an even lower difficulty in both scenarios. Kong just simply adapted to Ramarak's skills and defeated her. Anyways, that will wrap up the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. It wasn't much, but anything to stay active, I guess. But with all that said, have a good day, people.
Que obre un milagro, oye tus plegarias y manda al gran escuadrón. El regalo don, se coma ese señor. El regalo don, se coma ese señor. El regalo don, se coma tu familia. El regalo don, que muere con dolor. El regalo don, se toma un video beta. El regalo don.